to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. Do you wonder how your faith fits together with your profession? Well, join us as we explore how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Well, hello and welcome to Two Roads Crossing. My name is Barry Schwenk. I'm a veterinarian, a pastor, and your host as we explore the intersection of faith and vocation. You know, it's really easy as veterinary professionals for us to overlook the people that are on the other side of our patients. It's even easier, I found in my experience, for us to neglect or even take for granted the people that we work with every day in the trenches. How does our faith drive us to approach those relationships in a different way? Must we be intentional about developing those relationships? Today, I am joined by Michael Shirley, who is the Chief Empowerment Officer of the Family Pet Health in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He's also the co-host of the Family Pet Podcast, a podcast for curious pet owners. And you can find information about their hospital and links to their podcast at familypethealth.com. Michael, it's great to have you join me today. How are things in Tennessee?
Well, today is unseasonably warm. I think it's going to be close to 80 degrees, and it's at the time of recording, the end of February. So my daffodils look amazing, but I know that their death is shortly to come. So,
well, it's crazy because at the time of recording, the end of February, it's snowing outside in Arizona. So I'm not really sure
what world are we living in.
I know. I think the end days are upon us, so it's best be getting ready.
Is this the birth pains that it talks about in the Bible?
Exactly right. Hey, I've been looking forward to this conversation with you. It has always been. There's been this weird kind of fine line for a lot of folks within the veterinary profession, understanding what it means to live out your faith through your profession. I think there's this assumption, and somewhat we kind of propagate this even as coming from the Christian Veterinary Mission. We think that in order to be a good Christian, you've got to go overseas, or you have to preach in your clinic, or there's any number of things from knocking on doors to you name it. And what I really have been looking forward to talking to you about is you and your wife, Dr. Amy Shirley, opened up Family Pet Health. And you have been very intentional about building relationships in a way that respects and honors both your clients as well as your team. So I've been really excited to talk to you about that. So I appreciate you joining me today. I know you're busy, so that's always a big thing to take the time. But for our listeners, would you mind starting off just giving us a little bit of background, because you are not the veterinarian in your family.
I am not a veterinarian. I say I'm smarter than a veterinarian because I married one instead of becoming one. So
I agree. I
get to do all the fun things without having to go to all the school. So my background is I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I found out very early in college that I also liked people. And you talked about relationships. I wanted to be everyone's friend, and I was very social, and realized that didn't go very well with my studies. But at least for me, my wife also had friends. It's not like she didn't have any friends, but she was better at budgeting her time. So hopefully we'll practice. I'm going to start my timer here now too. So I don't talk too much, but I'm already off. So early in college, I decided I was not going to make it to vet school. So, but I had already been in the animal science department, doing my prerequisites, and I loved ag. I had a background in 4-H and then FFA in high school, and then ag at the university level. And so I knew that I wanted to be in agriculture some way. Amy and I started dating actually when she left to go to veterinary school. So we dated throughout her entire from the second semester in vet school all the way till graduation. We were together and dating. Wow. So I knew that I was going to work wherever she found a job. And back in 2005, when she graduated, jobs weren't just everywhere like they are today. So I was I started working at animal control in our county, in the county where we live now. So I did that for 2 years while she finished up and graduated veterinary school. She found a job in our hometown, and then I started looking for a job, and that's when I started with ag education. So I worked for 8 years for the Extension Service as a 4-H agent. And then in 2015, I transitioned from extension work into the high school classroom as an agriculture teacher and FFA advisor, and stayed in that role quite happy, very happy in doing that. In fact, I just finished an interim contract a few weeks ago. So I'm still teaching today. But she came home one day, a very long story short, she came home and said she wanted to open her own practice. And I was shocked, like totally shocked. That was not on my radar that she was going to do that. But she had been doing relief work for about a year at that point. And basically she just was done with that and decided that she wanted to open her own practice. I was on the couch watching TV. I jumped up, I gave her a high five and said, "What do you need from me?" And she said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, I don't know how I can help with that." But that led to some discussions about the why, like why did she want to open her own practice? And she said that she wanted to create the type of work environment where she wanted to go to work every day. And she wanted to surround herself with people that she wanted to work with every day. And I said, now that I can help you with, because that's team building. And as a teacher, that's what I do. I create a safe environment for my students to come in every day and where they can learn. Now, I don't know if they ever wanted to, but that was the goal. Some of my students said that the only reason they came to school was for my class, which that reminded me of my high school time as well. Like that ag class was my favorite class. But I had to create and work hard at creating a type of environment where my students wanted to be every day. And so when she told me that she needed that was her vision, I said, now that I can help with. And so that started our journey together as practice owners. So she handled the medical side of things and I handled the business, not all the business side, but most of the business things, marketing, team building, HR. Right now we're project planning. So, we're building a new hospital right now. So that's kind of our story, how Family Pet Health came to exist.
And it's interesting because I think that there are quite a few folks who maybe have had a similar experience where that first job maybe didn't necessarily pan out, and you're faced with a real crisis because you come out of vet school absolutely loving your profession, wanting to do it forever. And then there's this turning point where the honeymoon is kind of over, and it is a real challenge sometimes to go into work. And a lot of I think a lot of veterinary professionals start to feel like there's some kind of failure on their part because why am I not enjoying this anymore? Why am I not
right? Because there's such
it?
I think our industry attracts perfectionism, perfectionists, and so when things aren't going the way that many people in our profession may feel, they think that it's their fault. And I mean, it might be. It's not to say that it's not. Right. It might be their fault. They might be. So I spoke at the Real Life, Real Impact conference at UT a few weeks ago, and I spoke with the vet students, and I said, before you just quit your first job, before you're like, I can't, this place isn't what I thought it was going to be. First, look at yourself to see, did you contribute to that at all? You might need to apologize and reset the meter. But if you find yourself in an unsupportive, unproductive, unfulfilling environment, then leave. It's okay. It's okay to leave. It took my wife 10 years to get to that point.
I was just going to ask how long. Yeah, I'm just going to ask how long.
10 years, because she, I'll just stick with it. Right. And it wasn't it wasn't an awful place to work. I mean, right. We would have moved if it had been. But she wanted to, she decided, she came to the point where she decided after 10 years that it was time to head out. And so in the next, what ended up being 3 years, but between when she left and when we opened Family Pet Health, she worked in almost 30 different hospitals, which is an amazing number, right? And it gave her confidence. She was offered jobs probably on average every 4 clinics she worked at. They offered her a job. Again, not in today's market. This was in 2018, 17, 16. Right. And So I think it was good for her, but she never really found the place where she could see herself retiring from. So she wanted to create that environment.
And that's rather bold, and I applaud that, because there are so many that just get burned out of the profession and fall apart as a result. And I also appreciate what you said. It kind of reminds me of what Paul said: as much as it depends on you, live at peace with one another. And sometimes, in order to live at peace, you have to say goodbye and part ways. That's okay too, because the fit may not be right. We just think that every vet clinic is one size fits all, and you can just interchange veterinarians in there, and it doesn't the culture doesn't always allow that to happen, which is probably something that you can understand as a high school teacher, right? Not to make a little bit of change, but there's always that kind of changing, that turnover within your classes
every single year. So
that's right.
Even every day. I mean, throughout the day, I had 7 different classes, right? So, or 6, we call them preps. So, 6 or 7 different preps every day, or every week. And so I didn't have the same 25 to 30 kids all day long. They would rotate every class change. And then on top of that, every year a group of seniors leaves completely. They're gone. Bye.
Right.
And maybe never to be heard from again, or maybe like 20 years later we bump into each other and they tell me everything that they've been doing. And then every year you get a whole new crop of freshmen. So every day I would work with about 150 students in my classroom throughout the day. And then every year they would change over. And so that's it prepared me for knowing that I would, and you get new people and you help equip them and you build them up, and then they leave, and that's okay. Like, it excites us. Like, we enjoy having students come through Family Pet Health, and we also individually meet. I that's part of my role, is I individually meet with every person on our team regularly and find out what's their vision for their life, and what can Family Pet Health do to help you accomplish that vision. And it may not be that they want to retire from Family Pet Health. They may just say, hey, I want to be an orthopedic surgeon. I'm like, well, you're going to have to go somewhere else. so and then come back, please.
Yeah.
But what can I do to help them be competent, so that then they can apply and be the candidate that someone chooses to teach, that next level of what they're trying to accomplish. I see that as an exciting thing, not something to dread.
Well, and I can appreciate just that. It's an odd thing, because it's an individual approach, but there's also a group dynamic as well. And so,
sure.
Whether it's in a high school ag classroom, or whether it is part of your kennel staff, or whether it's your clientele, that you have these individuals, but then you also set these broad parameters as well, and you try to navigate within those. How much, when your wife kind of approached you about wanting to start this new thing, how much of that relationship building kind of was there from the very beginning of that conversation?
Well, so when we talked about the team and how we put that together, we started with a vision for ourselves. It starts with vision. Right. So before you can attract people to come onto your team, you have to tell them where you're going. There's a book here behind me called The Energy Bus. Everybody should read this. I'm going to hold this up here. So this is The Energy Bus by John Gordon. And we require everyone before they can come in to interview with our team, they have to read that book.
Oh, wow.
Like, what? You're making them read a book? Like, you're putting up roadblocks before you get an interview? Yes. Because this book it sets the tone for what it's like to work at Family Pet Health. But the number one, it talks about 10 rules for your life. The number one rule, it says you are the driver of your own bus. And what that means is that you can't necessarily affect what happens to you, like the things that happen in the environment to you, but you can control how you respond to them. Well, before we can recruit people to our team, we have to know where we're going. We have to know where is the energy bus? Where is the Family Pet Health bus going? We have big plans. We say that we want to change the veterinary industry, starting in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and starting with Family Pet Health. But then even more so, it starts with us. So
Mm.
it takes you all the way down. Before you can affect change, you have to start with yourself.
Mm.
And so we being my wife and I clearly developed our vision for what kind of a practice we wanted to work in every day. Because remember, this was my wife's wife, where she wanted to go to
Right.
work every day. Well, now it's where we want to go to work every day. Like, and now if you ask anybody on our team, they consider themselves part of the we.
Mm.
So we can hold each other accountable. I'm talking about team family pet health now.
Right.
We can hold each other accountable to our vision, and we revisit our vision regularly as a team to make sure we're all still wanting to go there. And one day they might want me to go off somewhere else because I'm holding the team's vision back, or and that'll be okay. But we had to start there. And so when you talk about relationships, I recruit to our vision. And then we work on relationships based on that vision. Our vision, our purpose says that we understand that the veterinary hospital can be a stressful place for everyone who enters through the doors. This leads to poor patient outcomes, an unhappy client experience, and burnout of the veterinary team. And so to combat these stresses, Family Pet Health seeks to respond to the needs of family pets in a positive environment. Right? Okay, that covers all the bases.
Right,
And
that's everybody.
Yeah. And so we can, when we have our core values, which I think we're going to talk about later, but so when we have things happen or we're dreaming about new things for the office, we run it through our core values and our purpose. And if it's outside of that, then we don't do it. And so we would have to decide, are we going to change our core values? Are we going to change our purpose? Or are we going to not pursue this thing that this idea that we have?
And that can be really hard because, again, going back to that perfectionism streak that a lot of veterinarians have, there's this desire to be everything for everyone at all times. And there's a lot of well-intentioned folks, and technically, I mean, really, this we're talking about a veterinary practice, but this applies to any walk of life. If you're trying to solve everyone's problems at all times, you're going to find out very quickly that you're solving no one's problem.
If you try to please everyone, you'll end up pleasing no one.
Exactly.
That's a saying. I don't know who said that. A wise man once said.
A wise man once
or
said.
Woman, I don't know. Might have been a woman. But it's very true. Like, we are not the veterinary office for everyone. We have we say, like, our target audience is clients who want a concierge type experience. And that requires a certain skill set of our team. Right. And it dictates, everything from appointment times. I mean, it's everything. We also want people who, it says, trust science and value connection. And because if we're like, hey, we need to give your dog this rabies vaccination. No, I don't believe in rabies vaccinations. I'm like, well, it is the law. Well, I don't believe in it. Well, you know what? You're not going to trust us. We don't, this is not good. You need to go find another vet office. And luckily there's 36 other ones within a 20-minute drive. So see ya. And then we just took that out of our lives. We don't even have to stress out about that person. They're happier. We're happier. And let's move on and deal with the people that we can see and that are in line with our vision. So we have to communicate that same vision. I don't just talk about it with the people we hire, but we regularly communicate that with our clients so that everyone has a good idea of what to expect.
Right. And well, that's
be the acronym for our core values.
I was just going to say, because that eventually drives you to your core values. And I want to talk more about those in a second, but it's also interesting how, and let me circle this back to the faith component here, because everything that I've heard thus far, we could be talking about this on a Christian podcast or a secular podcast.
Correct.
And everything goes well, but me as a believer, what I'm hearing is, I'm hearing Ephesians there. I'm hearing, the good works. I'm hearing about the intentionality. I'm hearing about being servants, being kind. I'm hearing all that. So how much does faith play into this process of visioning? And then also, because there's a fine line, right? Because there's a fine line as you're dealing with, as you're hiring people, as you're interviewing people, as you're establishing a clinic within the community. How do you walk that line? Because there are going to be a lot of folks here that might be listening that think, well, if I'm not wearing a Jesus hat when I walk in the building, then I've got a problem, or I'm not being a very good Christian. So how would you?
I struggled with that when I came to faith. I knew, like, I think I had two conversion moments in a way. Like, I was at Winterfest, a youth group, and I was like, I need to give my life to Christ. And then I was like, for some reason, I wasn't sitting with my youth group. I was like in another part of the auditorium. I'm sure I was late talking to somebody.
That's what youth functions are all about, right?
And so like when they had the altar call and stuff, like, I did it, but no one was around me to hold me accountable or ask me more about that. And so I told myself, before I tell my friends, I need to get a few things right in my life, because I know that I'm sinful in several areas of my life. And if I'm now professing to be a Christian, like, I'll be a hypocrite, and that might damage. So I went through this whole thing. It took a year later is when I realized I'll never be perfect. And it does that, like, God's grace is what, saves me, not anything I'm going to do here.
Right.
So I get that, like, that I should be doing more and all that kind of stuff. Listen, I think this is another way or another area that being a public school teacher prepared me for how we were going to approach this. Neither, like, in the public school, I can't profess my faith in my classroom, but my goal was to always be different and be a light by my works, or like the way I conducted myself, what I accepted as acceptable behavior in my classroom. I wanted it to be different. My son ended up teaching a Bible study in the high school in my classroom before school, but I couldn't be a part of that. But it became known, like, Mr. Shirley has a Bible study in his classroom before school. Right. I didn't lead it, but it was there. But I wanted my room to be welcoming to my students, no matter what their beliefs or non-beliefs were. Neither my wife nor I have the spiritual gift of evangelism. Like, it makes me uncomfortable to just walk up to somebody and start, can I tell you about Jesus? Like, I know people that do that in everything that they do, and it's amazing. And I'm like, wow. But they'll do that to everybody. And what I think my spiritual gift is like hospitality. And so, like, I'll throw a party,
right.
Or create a work environment that is acceptable and a good place to be, and then conduct ourselves so that maybe people ask us, why do you do this?
Right.
And then I can maybe if the relationship is there, then I'll feel more comfortable sharing my faith with them in a way that they'll know, because they have a relationship with me, that I'm not telling them that they're a bad person if they don't believe in God, but that if they ever have questions, they could ask me about them. That's how I taught in my classroom. And the best thing a student ever said to me was, "Will you pray with me?" I'm like, after I stopped crying. But I never talked with that student about my faith, but he knew, and he asked me if I would pray with him, and I'm like, absolutely, and come back tomorrow and we'll do it again.
That's right.
And so I hope that my wife and I run a business that causes people to ask us, why do you do it this way? And then that allows me to share my faith with them.
I think we're kind of a kindred spirit. I'm a varsity boys and girls soccer coach at the high school here, and I would echo everything that you just said. And it's crazy because you overtly, you can't say those things. People know that even to the point where people know that I'm also a pastor, but I don't start prayer time with the team. I don't do any of those things. But the same thing, there's this weekend, our girls team is going to receive a statewide sportsmanship award, because the positive attitude, the way that I approach my teams, shows them there's a certain standard, there's an expectation. This is how I do things. I care about them. I love them. that in turn spills out through them to the people around them. People can see it. People can see it. And I get these text messages from parents all the time, which is, hey, I know that I don't go to your church, but could you pray for our families having a tough time with this or whatever? And so this idea, and I think for some, again, going back to that perfectionist streak in veterinarians, when we think about evangelism, we automatically jump to Billy Graham, right? We're thinking, if I can't stand in front of that stadium, or if I can't, say those things to my client or even to my teammates,
Can I interrupt you just because my brain is thinking, and I don't want to miss this thought. The other night, my wife and I were going to bed, and we were talking about this very thing. And maybe some of the people on my team are going to see this video. Maybe it'll come across them some way.
Right.
I don't pray with my team, but I pray for my team.
Mm-hmm.
And it is okay if somebody out there is watching and you pray with your team. Fantastic.
Right.
That's great. I'm not saying that's wrong. For me and my wife, it's not the way that we designed our path.
Right.
And so I would never have met many of the people that I have met through veterinary medicine if I had structured my business any other way than what we do.
Right.
And so I'm okay with that. Like, my wife and I, we're strong in our faith. And so, like, we know ourselves, we know we're good, like, with each other, And so what I want to be is to build relationships. And like I said, I don't pray with my team. I pray for them. And probably not as much as I should, but we need to do better with that. We struggled. Like, I was telling you about the person, like, I know people, my wife knows people in the veterinary industry that just, they bring their faith into every conversation. And we were feeling down on ourselves for that.
Right.
And I said, stop, we can't do that. We can't do that. We don't need to do that. That's not healthy for us.
No.
What are we doing? And some people say, well, all I can do is pray. That's a lot. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's a whole lot. So do that.
Yep.
And so don't think of it as I'm just doing this, but think of it as I am doing this, and how valuable that is. So again, I want to be known as a great workplace, and then build relationships. And I want my team to know how much I care about them, because I genuinely do.
Right.
And then hopefully that will lead to some discussions, or just maybe we're priming them so that when they go out and they have somebody that has the gift of evangelism, that they can be like, okay, I'll talk to this person because the Shirleys aren't crazy, like, and so maybe they would feel more comfortable having that conversation with somebody besides us. But what are we doing to prepare their hearts for somebody, whether it's us later or someone else coming in and talking with them about God? So,
well, and it all stems back, and this is why I love having this conversation with you about. I really appreciate the intentionality of both you and your wife in approaching people as people, and not as they're not an objective. They're not a tool. They are they're hearts that need love and kindness and gentleness. And I appreciate what you said. When you said that you love your team, and that's regardless of what their faith background is, regardless of what their socioeconomics. I mean, there's just a heart, Christ's heart for people.
And I'll just give you a little more insight into the struggle that we have, is that we do care about them. So when do we, quote unquote, cross the line and say, can I talk to you about my faith someday? Like, I feel like we probably should do that sometime, and I don't know when the right time is. Maybe that's, if anybody's watching, say a prayer for us right now about that. Because I do care about them. And if something were to happen to them and I hadn't had that conversation, I feel like I would be guilty. So I don't know. I don't have the answer for the viewers out there. I just know what we're doing right now is that we're trying to create that positive work environment that concentrates on relationships and praying for our team. And I don't know when the right time to have that conversation is, but I feel like if we really do care about them, shouldn't we be having that conversation with them
Right.
eventually at some point? Yes, I think so.
Well,
That's my internal struggle.
I hear you. No, I mean,
Thanks
it's
for
a
hearing me
struggle.
out.
That's right. No, I mean, this is therapy. I'm only charging $200 an hour. So
That's right.
Well, but it comes back to the same thing. I think even when I can't remember who I was talking to about the parable of the sower, before a seed can be planted, ground has to be tilled. And there's some ground that's really hard. And the idea that sometimes we're casting seed on hard ground before it's been tilled is somewhat irresponsible. And there's some soil that maybe is a little bit softer, but there's stones that need to be dealt with or weeds that need to be dealt with. And so I appreciate, again, I appreciate what you've shared thus far about your approach, because it's an individualistic approach. This is not a program. It's not a system. If we hire you in as a Kindle assistant and in 6 months you're going to be saved and leading a Bible study. I mean, that's not the.
We're going to baptize you in the dog bathtub.
Exactly. You got hydrotherapy now.
Yeah, so. That's right. The underwater treadmill. That's right.
But it's like, that's what I love about it, is that you have this real intentionality about developing relationships and just loving on people and allowing Christ's love to pour through you. And I think that really comes out in your mission statement. And I, unfortunately, right now, we have to kind of wrap up this conversation. But let's carry this over to our next conversation, where I really want you to share about how you developed, how you and your wife kind of developed this mission statement, how it came to be, and what's at the heart of it. Because again, there's some great tools here that can be used, whether you're a veterinarian, whether you're in the veterinary profession, whether you're in a public school, no matter where you are. I think these tools are absolutely wonderful to use. So unfortunately, if you're listening, you got to come back to part 2. Michael Shirley returns, and we'll pick that up. We'll pick that up in our next session. And I hope that even as we've just been talking here in this current session, hopefully, if you've been listening, this conversation has been beneficial to you. That maybe you are being challenged a little bit to maybe rethink the way that you approach relationships, the way that you can be more intentional within the relationships that God has put in your path. And maybe because of this new understanding, together we are learning how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Thank you for listening to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. If you are blessed by this content, like and subscribe so that you are alerted when new content is released. If you would like more information about CVM, or if you have questions, comments, or topical suggestions, you can find us online at www.cvm.org. Or you can contact us by emailing podcast@cvm.org. God has a plan for the nations, and that plan includes you. We pray that CVM has encouraged you to live out your calling with confidence and competence. So, until next time, may the voice of the shepherd ring loud and clear as you follow him in faith to the intersection of two roads crossing.